Welcome to our deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about some common pitfalls that business analysts can fall into.
It's interesting because a lot of these mistakes are really about fundamentals.
Okay.
And they're often overlooked, and it's kind of like building a house on a shaky foundation.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, you can have a really fancy structure on top, but if the foundation's no good, uh, it's not going to last.
Yeah, it's going to crumble.
Exactly.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about all that, and we're going to be using Dana Brownlee's white paper, Successful Business Analysts, how they avoid the 5 most common BA mistakes.
Yeah, and it's a really good paper because she lays out these 5 mistakes, but she really gives you like a blueprint for how to avoid them and set yourself up for success.
Right, so it's not just like a don't do this checklist,
Exactly. It's much more than
but
that.
there's more about the why.
Exactly.
Okay, so her first pitfall is not clarifying the role of BA. And I can see how that would lead to confusion, missed deadlines, frustration.
Yeah, I mean, it seems really basic, right? You're a BA, you analyze business problems.
Right.
But it can be much more ambiguous than that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, absolutely. So different companies, even different projects within the same company, can have wildly different expectations for what a BA does.
Mm,
You might be seen as a project manager or a technical expert or a facilitator or some kind of combination.
right. Or all of the above.
Exactly. So how do you avoid that role?
Hmm.
Confusion.
Right. So I guess you don't want to just show up on day one and be like, all right, what am I doing here, guys?
That's one way to do it.
Yeah.
But Brownlee suggests a more proactive strategy, and I think that's really important here, just to ask clarifying questions.
Okay, so don't be shy.
Don't be shy at all. Your sponsor wants you to be successful, and they need you to be clear on your role in order for that to happen.
Okay, so what kind of questions should we be asking?
You need to think of it like you're a detective gathering clues.
Ooh.
You're trying to piece together a picture of what your role is going to be, what your responsibilities are, and what the expectations are going to be.
Okay.
So you can start with the basics, like what is my role in this effort? What is my level of responsibility?
So like setting boundaries.
Setting boundaries, yeah, and making sure everyone understands like where your responsibilities begin and end.
And making sure there's no overlap. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Okay, so what else?
Also, think about the resources that you're going to need to be successful.
Okay.
Will you be a lone wolf or will you have a team? What other resources will be available? What will the reporting relationships be?
Oh, that's important.
Yeah, getting that straight from the start can save you a lot of headaches down the road.
So it's like getting your toolkit together,
Exactly, like making sure you have all the equipment you need before you set out on your mission.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. But what if like you walk into a project and it just seems like no one knows what they're doing, even the sponsor?
That happens more often than you think.
Really?
Oh, yeah, and that's where your skills as an architect come in.
Oh,
You need to help define the structure, the process, even the end goal of the project. So ask questions like, what is the end goal in mind? What specific deliverables are expected?
so you're kind of creating the blueprint before you can start building?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to help create that blueprint.
Right. Okay, I like that. So we're not just passively receiving instructions.
Right. Yeah.
We're actively shaping the projects from the get-go.
I love that.
Okay, but things can go wrong, even with the best laid plans, right?
Oh, of course.
So how do we prepare for those inevitable bumps in the road?
That's where the diplomat in you comes in.
Oh,
It's all about being proactive, about identifying potential conflicts and risks. And a lot of times you can do that just by asking what project-related risks are known at this point.
oh, that's smart.
Yeah, you're just acknowledging those potential challenges early on
Right.
so you can start developing mitigation strategies.
And setting realistic expectations.
Exactly.
I'm seeing how these seemingly simple questions can really have a huge impact.
Yeah, it's not just about gathering information. It's about setting yourself up for success from the beginning.
Right, and I guess it's true what they say, a well-defined problem is half solved.
Absolutely.
Okay, so speaking of well-defined problems,
Yeah.
let's move on to Dana Brownlee's second pitfall, rushing through detailed requirements development.
Yeah, this is where that temptation to jump into the doing can really get you in trouble.
Right, and I can see how that happens.
Yeah.
You get excited about a project, you want to start making things happen. You might skip over that planning stage.
Totally.
But what's the harm in that?
Well, the harm can be significant. Rushing into requirements gathering without a solid plan is like building a house without a blueprint.
Oh.
You might end up with a structure that looks impressive from afar,
Right.
but it doesn't have the structural integrity to stand the test of time.
So poorly defined requirements lead to a shaky foundation.
Exactly.
And then what kind of cracks start to appear in that foundation?
Oh, you'll see all sorts of problems. You'll likely encounter scope creep. where the project just keeps expanding beyond its original boundaries. You'll face a chaotic change management process with constant revisions and rework.
Right.
And ultimately, you'll encounter delays, frustration, and potentially even project failure.
Oh, no, that's a recipe for disaster.
It is.
So how do we avoid that?
Well, structure is your best friend here.
Mm-hmm.
Brownlee recommends developing a comprehensive requirements development plan.
Okay.
This plan is going to act as your blueprint, and it's going to outline your approach to gathering, documenting, and managing requirements throughout the project lifecycle.
Okay.
It should align with the overall project plan to make sure everyone's on the same page.
So we've got our blueprint. What tools do we need to start building?
Well, think efficiency-detailed interview guides and templates can be really valuable for capturing stakeholder feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine you're interviewing a key stakeholder. Instead of just fumbling through a list of random questions, you have a structured guide that makes sure you cover all the essential points.
Oh, that's so smart.
And you get consistent information.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've definitely been in those interviews that just kind of felt like a waste of everyone's time.
Absolutely.
So a guide would have been a lifesaver.
Definitely. And then to make sure you're talking to the right people, conduct a stakeholder analysis.
Okay.
Identify all the individuals or groups that have a stake in the project, understand their roles and interests, and then assess their level of influence.
Okay.
That helps you prioritize your interviews.
So you're gathering input from the most relevant sources.
Exactly. Prioritization is key. But even with a solid plan, a detailed guide, and a prioritized list of stakeholders, things are going to change.
Oh, they always do.
Right. So how do we build that flexibility into our foundation?
Right.
That's where a clear change management process comes in before you finalize your requirements. Establish a process for handling those changes.
Okay.
So you determine when the document will be considered final, or what we call baselined. You outline how changes will be requested, reviewed, and approved, and you specify who has the authority to authorize those changes.
So we're creating a safety net.
Exactly.
For those inevitable changes and making sure they're handled in a systematic way.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. And this all sounds very organized and structured, which I imagine can be challenging in the very often chaotic world of business.
Definitely.
But think of it this way. The more structure you build in up front, the more flexibility you'll have later on.
That's a good point.
If you have that solid foundation, you can adapt to those changes without the whole structure collapsing.
Yeah, I like that approach. It's not about being rigid or inflexible. It's about having a framework that allows for agility.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about role clarity, structured requirements. And now I imagine that even with the best structures in place, sometimes that human element can throw a wrench into things.
Oh, absolutely.
Which brings us to pitfall number 3, failing to balance task and relationships.
This is a really interesting one because it gets to the heart of what it means to be a successful BA. You can be a technical whiz, a master of processes, a documentation guru, but if you can't build strong relationships, you are going to hit roadblocks.
So it's not just about the technical skills.
No.
It's about those people skills.
Absolutely.
But why are those relationships so crucial in the world of business analysis?
Well, think about what we do as BAs. We're constantly gathering information, facilitating discussions, negotiating solutions.
Right.
We rely on people to share their knowledge, their perspectives, their buy-in.
Yeah.
Without strong relationships built on trust and respect, that collaboration breaks down.
People are less willing to share their insights.
Exactly.
They might withhold information.
Yeah.
They might not support your recommendations, even if they're in their best interest.
Absolutely. And that lack of trust can create a really toxic environment where conflict festers, communication suffers, and progress just grinds to a halt.
It's like a downward spiral.
It is.
Okay, so relationships matter. I think we've established that. But how do we strike that balance between getting things done and nurturing those relationships?
Well, it is possible, but it takes a conscious effort, and Brownlee suggests making relationship building an integral part of your work, not just an afterthought.
Okay.
And I have a real-world example that illustrates this beautifully.
Ooh, yeah, I love real-world examples.
So a colleague of mine was telling me about a project that was completely stuck. The team was butting heads, communication had broken down, and progress had just stalled.
Sounds tense.
It was a combination of factors. Different stakeholders had different priorities.
Okay.
There were some personality clashes, and the team had just fallen into a pattern of unproductive communication.
So what did they do? Did they bring in a mediator or try to restructure the team or something?
Well, the BA on the project was a very savvy guy,
Okay.
and he decided to try something a little different.
Okay.
He organized a bowling night for the entire team.
Oh.
No agendas, no work talk, just pure fun and socializing.
So he took them out of the office environment,
Yeah,
created a space for informal interaction.
exactly.
Did it work?
You bet the bowling night broke the ice. People relaxed. They started talking to each other not as colleagues with conflicting viewpoints, but as human beings.
I love that.
Yeah, and the results were remarkable when the team got back to work. The collaboration improved dramatically, and they were able to find solutions that they hadn't even considered before.
So it's like sometimes you just need to step away from the spreadsheets,
Exactly.
have some fun together.
Yeah,
So it sounds like that bowling night really helped to build trust and rapport.
it did.
And then that paved the way for more productive collaboration.
Absolutely.
But did it really solve all the team's problems?
Well, you're right to be skeptical. It wasn't a magic bullet. There were
Uh-huh.
still challenges to overcome.
Yeah.
But the bowling night created a foundation of goodwill and camaraderie that made those challenges much easier to address.
So it's not about expecting one social event to fix everything. It's about creating that culture of connection.
Exactly.
And fostering an environment where people feel comfortable communicating openly and respectfully.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
I'm starting to see how powerful this can be.
Yeah.
But what about those of us who aren't like naturally social butterflies? Do we have to force ourselves to become the office party planner, to be a successful BA?
Not at all. Building relationships doesn't have to be about big, extravagant gestures.
Okay.
It's often the small, everyday interactions that make the biggest difference.
Okay, so give us some practical tips. What can we do to incorporate relationship building into our daily work?
Well, Brownlee suggests incorporating social activities into the project schedule right from the start.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Right.
A team lunch, a coffee break, even a virtual happy hour if you're working remotely. These informal gatherings give people the chance to connect on a personal level.
Great.
And build rapport outside the pressures of work.
Okay, that's great. What else?
Take a genuine interest in your stakeholders as people learn about their interests outside of work.
Okay.
Their families, their hobbies.
So creating that human connection.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
shows that you value them as individuals.
Right, not just as resources.
Exactly.
Okay.
And don't underestimate the power of transparency. Share information openly with your stakeholders, keep them in the loop,
Okay.
and avoid being secretive or evasive.
So build that trust.
Exactly. It fosters a sense of
Kill it.
shared ownership.
Okay, transparency is on the list. What else?
Be empathetic. Truly listen to your stakeholders' concerns, even if you don't agree with them. Acknowledge their feelings. Try to understand their perspective.
Empathy, so important in any role, really, but especially as a BA
Oh, for sure.
who's often dealing with really sensitive issues
Absolutely.
and conflicting priorities.
Yeah.
Okay, and finding.
And finally, be honest. Always tell the truth, even when it's difficult. People appreciate authenticity, and they'll respect you more in the long run if they know they can count on you to be straight with them.
Okay, honesty, empathy, transparency. These are all qualities that build trust and create a positive working environment.
And who doesn't want that?
I know, right? Okay, I'm feeling energized. I'm ready to tackle those relationships. But before we move on to pitfall number 4, I think we need a quick recap
A recap is a good idea.
of what we've covered so far because we've already learned a ton.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Okay, so pitfall number 1, not clarifying the role of the BA.
Right.
And we avoid this by channeling our inner detective, asking those clarifying questions up front, making sure we're all on the same page about responsibilities and expectations.
And don't forget your architect's hat and your diplomat's toolkit.
Exactly.
Right.
Pitfall number 2, rushing through detailed requirements development.
Yeah.
And we can avoid this by embracing structure, creating that comprehensive plan, developing templates, conducting that stakeholder analysis, and establishing a clear change management process.
Think of it like building a house.
Yeah.
You need a solid blueprint and the right tools.
And finally, pitfall number 3, failing to balance task and relationships.
Right.
We avoid this by making relationship building an integral part of our work through those social activities. Genuine interest in our stakeholders, transparency, empathy, Honesty.
Remember, it's all about people invest in those relationships, and they will pay dividends down the line. But it's not just about being nice or planning parties. It's about creating an environment of trust, respect, open communication.
I love it. I'm already starting to see how these three pitfalls are interconnected.
Yeah.
It's like a triangle.
Like that.
Role, clarity, structured requirements, strong relationships.
Yeah.
Each element kind of supports the others and creates that stable foundation for BA success.
I love that observation, and I think it highlights the fact that these pitfalls aren't isolated issues. They're interconnected challenges that really require a more holistic approach.
This is such valuable insight, but I'm eager to hear about the remaining pitfalls.
Yeah.
So what else does Dana Brownlee have in store for us?
Well, in part 2, we'll be delving into 2 more pitfalls that can derail even the most well-intentioned BA. We're going to explore the dangers of confusing user-stated needs with their real needs.
Okay.
And we'll discuss why quantifying benefits is so crucial for securing buy-in
Ooh,
and achieving lasting impact.
I can't wait. It sounds like we're about to unlock even more secrets to BA success.
I think we are.
So until next time, happy analyzing, everyone.
See you then. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of business analysis.
We're picking up right where we left off, dissecting those common BA mistakes and figuring out how to sidestep them.
And if you're just joining us, you might want to rewind and catch part 1. We laid the groundwork for understanding the importance of role clarity, structured requirements, and strong relationships.
Yes, we talked about building a solid foundation for BA success, and I'm eager to hear about the remaining pitfalls. What else does Dana Brownlee highlight as key to avoiding those BA blunders?
Well, one of the most common traps BAs fall into is taking user requests at face value. Brownlee calls this confusing users' stated needs with real needs, and it's a pitfall that can lead to solutions that miss the mark.
This sounds intriguing. I can see how a user might say, I need a new report. But what they really need is a better way to access existing data, or a streamlined process that eliminates the need for the report altogether.
Exactly. Users are great at telling you what they think they need, but they're not always the best at articulating the underlying problem that needs to be solved. They might be focused on a symptom rather than the root cause.
So it's like going to the doctor and saying, I need a painkiller for my headache, when the real problem might be stress, lack of sleep, or even something more serious.
That's a perfect analogy. And just like a good doctor wouldn't just prescribe painkillers without investigating the cause of the headache, a skilled BA won't just build a solution based on a user's stated need without digging deeper.
So how do we become those skilled BAs? How do we avoid misdiagnosing the problem and prescribing the wrong solution?
Dana Brownlee uses a powerful analogy. She calls the effective BA a keen investigator, and I love that image.
Ooh, I like that too. It suggests a sense of curiosity, a willingness to ask probing questions, and an ability to piece together clues to uncover the truth.
Precisely. And just like a detective, we need to start by gathering evidence. But instead of fingerprints and DNA, we're looking for insights into user behavior, motivations, and pain points.
So how do we go about gathering that evidence? Where do we start our investigation?
Brownlee suggests shifting the focus from solutions to problems. Encourage users to articulate the pain points they're experiencing, the obstacles they're facing, and the desired outcomes they're hoping to achieve.
So instead of asking, what kind of software feature do you want? We should be asking, what problem are you trying to solve with this software? What's not working for you right now?
Brilliant. That's exactly the kind of questioning that can unlock valuable insights. And remember, start broad and then narrow down. Begin with open-ended questions that give users the space to express themselves freely.
Like, tell me about a recent time when this process caused you frustration. What happened? What were you hoping to accomplish?
Perfect. Those kinds of questions invite storytelling, and stories are often where the real gold nuggets of insight are hidden. I remember a project where we were tasked with improving the onboarding process for new employees. Initially, the users focused on specific forms and documents they wanted to digitize, but when we encouraged them to tell us about their experiences onboarding new hires, a different picture emerged.
What did they tell you?
They shared stories of confusion delays and missed deadlines. They talked about the frustration of searching for information across multiple systems and the challenges of coordinating with different departments. It became clear that the problem wasn't just about inefficient forms, it was about a lack of clarity, communication, and coordination across the entire onboarding process.
So by listening to their stories, you were able to uncover the real needs that were driving their requests.
Exactly. And that led us to a much more effective solution. Instead of just digitizing existing forms, we designed a centralized onboarding portal that provided a clear roadmap for new hires, streamlined communication between departments, and automated key tasks.
That's a fantastic example. It shows how taking the time to truly understand user needs can lead to solutions that are far more impactful than simply addressing their surface-level requests. But I'm guessing it's not always easy to get users to open up and share their experiences. What happens when they're resistant to this kind of probing?
That's where your relationship building skills come in. If you've established a strong foundation of trust and rapport, users are more likely to feel comfortable sharing their honest perspectives.
It all comes back to those relationships. Okay, so we've encouraged them to tell their stories. We've listened carefully and we've started to uncover those hidden needs. What's next in our investigation?
Once you've got them talking, start drilling down with more specific questions. Use the classic 5 W's and an H. Why, what, where, who, how, when. These can help you gather detailed information and clarify any ambiguities.
So if a user says, I need a new reporting system, we might ask, why do you need a new system? What's wrong with the current one? Where are you facing the most challenges? Who else is impacted by this issue? How do you envision this new system working? And when do you ideally need it in place?
You've got it. By asking these probing questions, you're not just accepting the user's initial statement at face value, you're digging deeper to understand the underlying needs and motivations.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, right? Each question reveals another layer of understanding.
I love that analogy. And remember, always end your interviews by asking, is there anything else you think I should know? You'd be surprised how often this simple question uncovers crucial information that might have otherwise been missed.
It's like leaving the door open for those last-minute aha moments. So by becoming skilled investigators, we can ensure we're building solutions that address real needs, not just perceived ones. This is such a powerful concept. But I'm curious, are there ever times when it's okay to just take the user's request at face value?
There might be situations where time constraints or project scope limit your ability to conduct a deep dive into user needs. But even in those cases, it's important to at least ask some clarifying questions and try to get a sense of the underlying problem.
So even if we can't do a full-blown investigation, we can still apply those detective skills to gather as much information as possible.
Exactly. It's about being mindful and intentional even when time is tight. Now let's move on to Dana Brownlee's final pitfall, not quantifying benefits. This one is all about connecting your solutions to the bottom line.
I have a feeling this is where things get a little more technical. Does this mean we need to become financial analysts to be successful BAs?
Not necessarily, but we do need to develop a fluency in the language of business. Decision makers are often driven by numbers. They want to see the return on investment, the cost savings, the increased efficiency, the tangible benefits that justify the investment in your solutions.
So it's not enough to just talk about how great our project is. We need to show them the numbers.
Exactly. We need to demonstrate the impact in a way that resonates with their priorities. Think about it. You've spent weeks, maybe even months, working on a solution that you believe will revolutionize a process, improve customer satisfaction, and boost employee morale. But when you present your recommendations, you focus primarily on those qualitative benefits.
And the stakeholders are sitting there thinking, that's all well and good, but how much is this going to cost us and what's the payback period?
Precisely. They need to see the financial justification to greenlight your project. So the savvy BA needs to become fluent in the language of quantification.
So how do we translate those warm and fuzzy qualitative benefits into cold, hard numbers?
It's all about finding the quantifiable equivalents. For example, instead of just saying increased customer satisfaction, you could say customer complaints reduced by 30%. Instead of increased employee morale, you could say employee turnover reduced by 25%. And instead of increased efficiency, you could say average production cycle time reduced by 20%.
I'm seeing a pattern here. We're taking those vague, subjective statements and turning them into concrete, measurable metrics.
Exactly. And those metrics are what speak to decision makers. They show the tangible impact of your recommendations and make it much easier to justify the investment. I once worked on a project where we were tasked with improving the online customer experience for a major retailer. We knew that a more user-friendly website would lead to increased sales, but we needed to quantify that benefit to get buy-in from the executives.
So how did you go about quantifying that benefit?
We analyzed data from A/B testing, comparing the conversion rates of the old website with the redesigned version. We also conducted customer surveys to gather feedback on their online shopping experience. By combining these quantitative and qualitative data points, We were able to demonstrate that the redesigned website led to a 15% increase in online sales.
That's impressive. And I'm guessing that 15% increase made it much easier to get the executives on board with the project.
It did. It showed them that our recommendations weren't just about making the website look prettier, they were about driving tangible business results.
This is a great example of how quantifying benefits can make all the difference in getting buy-in and securing resources. But what about those intangible benefits that are harder to measure? Things like improved collaboration, increased innovation, or a stronger company culture. Do we just ignore those?
It's true that some benefits are more difficult to quantify, but that doesn't mean we should ignore them. It's about finding creative ways to demonstrate their value. For example, you could track the number of cross-functional initiatives launched as a proxy for improved collaboration, or you could measure employee engagement scores as an indicator of company culture.
So even if we can't put an exact dollar amount on every benefit, we can still find ways to make them visible and demonstrate their impact.
Exactly. It's about telling a compelling story that connects your solutions to the strategic objectives of the business. But remember, there's a danger in becoming too fixated on quantifying every benefit.
Ooh, why is that? I thought numbers were always our friends when making a business case.
While numbers are powerful, focusing solely on quantifiable metrics can lead to neglecting important qualitative aspects. For instance, a project might demonstrate a strong ROI but negatively impact employee morale or customer experience.
So it's about finding the right balance. We need to show the financial impact, but we also need to acknowledge those less tangible but equally important aspects of our work. We're not just number crunchers, we're human-centered problem solvers.
Precisely, and that human-centered approach is what sets great BAs apart.
Okay, we've talked about avoiding the pitfall of taking user requests at face value by becoming skilled investigators, and we've learned the importance of quantifying benefits while still acknowledging the qualitative aspects of our work. I'm feeling like we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have. We've explored 4 common BA blunders and gained some invaluable strategies for avoiding them, but we have one more pitfall to dissect.
I'm already feeling more confident in my ability to navigate the complex world of business analysis. So what's next on our agenda?
In Part 3, we'll delve into the final pitfall, failing to manage stakeholders effectively. We'll discuss strategies for building consensus, navigating organizational politics, and ensuring your projects have the support they need to succeed.
That sounds crucial. I can't wait to hear more. So until next time, happy analyzing, everyone. Welcome back, deep divers. We are in the final stretch of our exploration into the world of business analysis and those common pitfalls that can really trip us up.
We've been using Dana Brownlee's white paper as our guide, dissecting 5 common mistakes BAs make and, more importantly, figuring out how to avoid them.
We've talked about clarifying your role,
Yeah.
taking a structured approach to requirements, and building those all-important relationships.
Those are all foundational, but today I want to kind of zoom in on a skill that trips up a lot of BAs,
Okay.
and that's stakeholder management.
Ooh, that sounds tricky. It's like navigating a minefield, you know?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Stakeholder management can feel like a minefield, especially when you're dealing with conflicting priorities or, personalities that clash.
So how do we navigate this minefield without setting off any explosions?
Well, first we need to understand that stakeholders are not a monolithic entity.
Okay.
They're individuals, each with their own perspectives, motivations, and levels of influence.
So a one-size-fits-all approach isn't going to work.
Not at all. You need to tailor your communication and engagement strategies to each stakeholder group.
It sounds like those relationship-building skills we talked about in Part 2 are going to come in handy here.
Absolutely. Building relationships is a key part of stakeholder management, but it's also about understanding the bigger picture.
Okay.
The organizational dynamics and the power structures that are at play.
So we need to become like organizational anthropologists.
I love that it's about observing, listening, understanding the unspoken rules that shape decision-making. And that brings us to a crucial tool, stakeholder analysis.
Okay. Tell me more.
So stakeholder analysis involves identifying all the key stakeholders, understanding their roles and interests, and assessing their level of influence.
So we're creating a map of the stakeholder landscape to guide our engagement.
Exactly. This map helps you tailor your approach. Some stakeholders might be highly influential, but not directly impacted by the project,
Okay.
while others are deeply impacted, but have less sway.
So we need to keep those highly influential stakeholders happy.
You got to keep them informed, keep them happy.
Okay.
And for those who are deeply impacted, you want to focus on clear communication, transparency, and opportunities for feedback.
Got
The
it.
key is to be flexible and responsive to individual needs.
This all sounds like a lot of work. Is it really worth the effort?
Absolutely. By effectively managing stakeholders, you build support for your projects, you minimize resistance, and you increase the likelihood of success.
And we avoid those stakeholder explosions.
Exactly. But managing stakeholders is only half the battle. The next challenge is building consensus, which can be just as tricky.
Getting everyone to agree. That sounds like a Herculean task.
It can be, especially when you're dealing with strong opinions and competing priorities, but there are strategies that can help.
I'm all ears.
First and foremost, remember what we talked about with communication. You need to articulate your ideas clearly, listen actively to different perspectives, and facilitate constructive dialogue.
So it's not about pushing our own agenda.
Right.
It's about creating a space where everyone feels comfortable sharing their thoughts.
Exactly. And sometimes you need to wear multiple hats: facilitator, mediator, even therapist.
Therapist. That's a new one for a BA.
Well, think about it. We're often dealing with people who are anxious about change, resistant to new processes, or simply frustrated. Part of our job is to listen and validate their feelings and help them navigate those emotions.
So we're building a bridge of understanding between different perspectives. And that bridge leads to consensus.
Beautifully said. And remember, building consensus is not about getting everyone to agree with you 100%.
Okay.
It's about finding a solution that everyone can live with, one that addresses the core needs of the business while respecting individual perspectives.
This has been such an insightful deep dive. We've learned so much from Dana Brownlee's wisdom.
She provides a fantastic framework for thinking about these common pitfalls and how to avoid them.
But I think what really resonated with me is that emphasis on the human element of business analysis. You know, it's not just about processes and tools.
Yeah.
It's about people.
Absolutely. The best BAs are the ones who understand that technology and processes are ultimately meant to serve people.
Right.
And that means building relationships, understanding needs, and finding solutions that work for everyone.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. Remember, avoiding these pitfalls is not just about checking boxes.
Right.
It's about embracing the why behind these best practices.
Yeah, it's about finding your own unique style as a BA while staying true to those core values of the profession.
Right.
Clear communication, empathy, collaboration, and a commitment to delivering value.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
So as you continue on your BA journey, remember to stay curious, stay adaptable, and stay committed to excellence.
And never stop learning.
Never. The world of business analysis is constantly evolving, and the best BAs are the ones who are always eager to learn and grow.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you today.
The pleasure was all mine. And to our amazing listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and feel inspired to tackle your next BA challenge with confidence.
You got this.
Until next time, happy analyzing.